Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's that time again, Sunday Night History Chat. It is February 4th, 2024. Thank you so much for joining me here in my library. It's great to have folks in here, and I'm gonna start off this evening by making a confession. I've been telling y'all all along that we're like 6.5 years in, and that's not true. Somebody says I don't have audio, Elizabeth. Um, somebody that's I don't have audio. Do I have audio or not?
Yes, you do.
Oh, I do have audio now. That is awesome. I've been telling y'all for the past 6.5 years, or that we have on that we were hitting 6.5 years, and that's not true. We just hit like 6 years this past week. So I apologize for that. I want to keep everything honest here on Sunday Night History Chat. Want to say good evening to everybody. Hope everybody is doing well. Adam and Josh and Gavin Duckworth and Jason and Niels. Just hope everybody is doing really, really good out there this evening and looking forward to chat. I will be speaking this Saturday night in Morganton, North Carolina, I think, or Valdez, North Carolina, in Valdez, North Carolina for their Sons of Confederate Veterans Camp. And then on Monday, a week, I will be at the Burke County Public Library. Not sure how I wound up in Burke County twice in 1 week, but that's okay. Looking forward to that. And just going to have a great time. Come on out with your questions. Join the conversation. If you want more details, shoot me a note. I will have details in the very, very, very near future about both of those events. So without further ado, we're going to jump into our Sunday Night History Chat. We've got a good friend of mine joining me this evening. Skip Smith lives down a county below me. And it's just a hair warmer down there, I do believe. How are you this evening, Skip?
I'm doing good, Mike. Thank you for having me.
Fantastic. Skip, how did you get interested in the war?
Oh, gracious. Probably started at college.
Right.
Well, the Civil War specifically, that part. Grew up, my dad was Marine in World War II, and I had 11 uncles in World War II. So I had my growing up years filled up with their stories. Got into college, joined a fraternity. Robert E. Lee was the spiritual founder of it, and that kind of got everything rolling. And so been interested in it since about 1980, I guess.
Right. Fantastic. I know that you and I share some of the same background, being fascinated with a particular time period and doing a lot of stuff in the field, trying to get people interested and just showing people, what history was kind of really like. More than just pages on a book, how it smells and how it feels.
Yep.
We both served as colonels of two different regiments in the reenacting world. And I don't know about you, but I wouldn't trade those experiences for anything.
Oh, no.
Just phenomenal people.
Yes.
And just places that we get to go and just really neat places,
Yeah. It brings the books to life.
It sure does. It sure does. And it adds a whole lot to it. So we're going to be talking tonight about Confederate battle flags and state flags and pieces of history from the war. And I'm going to turn it over to you in just a second. But to segue into that, when a Union soldier captured a flag, he got the Medal of Honor for it.
A lot of times.
And
deservedly.
Well, and that's what I was going to kind of hit at. Some of those men generally went up to a Confederate color bearer, an ensign or a color sergeant, and, killed that man or knocked him down and took that flag. But there are other cases, like the 18th North Carolina at Gettysburg, that flag was just laying there on the field. Yeah. And he went over there and picked it up, and he got a medal for it. So I think the criteria is just a little bit stiffer these days to get the Medal of Honor awarded by Congress. But there were a lot of flags that wound up north, Confederate flags that wound up north after the war. Right. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about this evening. And I'm going to turn it over to you for a few minutes and You let me know when you're ready to start those slides.
Okay, I'm ready whenever
You're
you.
ready. Okay. I wasn't that ready. All right, here we go.
Okay, you go ahead and go to that next slide. All right. As Michael said, a lot of flags ended up north, and at the end of the war, about 545 flags were at the War Department. And from my understanding, as the flags was captured, it was typically turned over to the regimental commander, and it went up the chain of command, and eventually ended up at the War Department. By the end, though, there was a ton of flags sitting in Washington, D.C. About 22 years later, as a kind of a gesture of reconciliation, the Adjutant General of the United States, Drum, suggested to President Grover Cleveland that we return the flags to the southern states, to the men that bore them. That's the way his words were. And Grover Cleveland had Endicott, his Secretary of War, to send out a letter to the governors of the southern states informing them that the flags would be returned. Okay, go ahead, Mike. That gesture, though, fell through. A lot of the Union veterans did not want those flags back. Some of the leading politicians were against it. So Grover Cleveland basically pulled that offer back, and the flags moved around to various places in D.C. I remember reading about 3 places actually that they ended up at. So every time they were moved, those little pieces of fabric or notes that were attached to the flag identifying them, a lot of them got lost. The flags were deteriorating pretty quickly as they were put into the basements of some of the buildings. And in 1905, President Theodore Roosevelt decided we need to get the flags back. You know, let's have a point of reconciliation. They'd just come off the Spanish-American War. The country was uniting again. And their plan was, and it was the 58th Congress that issued a decree there that we're going to return the flag to those that bore them, and only the ones that were identified, though. That was the key part. Once those 500 out of 545, 252 were still left after they returned them. Now, North Carolina Museum of History's their bulk of their flag collection come from this 1905 return. Okay, Mike. 1906. Well, they have all these flags. What are we going to do with them? And so they decided to try to do a central location, something that was, you know, everybody would be acceptable with. And so the 59th Congress decided to send those flags to the Confederate Memorial Literary Society, which was basically the forerunner of the Museum of the Confederacy in Richmond, Virginia. They sent those. At the same time, the state of Virginia also sent the 75 flags that they had received in 1905. They sent those to the Confederate Memorial Literary Society as well. Now, through this is kind of a fact to keep in the back of your head. Out of those 75 flags that were sent as Virginia flags, modern research has determined that they're not Virginia flags. They, in fact, belong to the 12th North Carolina and the 49th North Carolina. So they were sent under the impression or under the that these were Virginia flags, but they're not. Okay, go ahead. Now, out of those 252 flags that they received in 1906, they have, through the research, independent research, people like Howard Madison and other people, Rebecca Rose was leading the charge at the Museum of the Confederacy. They have identified 91 of the 252. Out of those 91, 23 are North Carolina flags, according to the Museum of the Confederacy's book. You probably can see it here. Colors of the Gray, published in the late 90s, I believe it was. Okay, Mike. Other southern states' flags out of those 91. You had Alabama, Arkansas, Georgia, all those. I'll let you read them. You can see how many flags they identified from the other southern states. If these had been a thing to keep in mind, if these had been identified in 1905, they would have gone to the southern states and not to the Confederate Memorial Literary Society. Okay. This is the first slide of the 25 North Carolina flags that are up there. 2 come from the 1905, misidentified, and then the other 23 are the 1906 that have been identified. Okay, Mike. And you can see item 13 and item 17, those are the 1905 flags that were originally identified as Virginia flags. Okay. And then there's the last of it. That totals 25 of our flags from North Carolina are up there. All right. Now, Michael alluded to reenacting. I was a member of the 26th, still am. I just don't get in the field anymore. But from 1983 to 2013, I was very active with the group in the field. We started a partnership with the North Carolina Museum of History in 2007. We restored our first flag ever for them. And at the same time, we put up a monument in New Bern, North Carolina to the 26th. And that's why you see the March 2007 on the screen there. While we were down in New Bern, I was approached by 2 descendants of Colonel Lane, actually, the 3rd Colonel, asking what would I think about getting a 26 Gettysburg flag from the Museum of the Confederacy down to Raleigh. And I said, well, who wouldn't love that? So we started kind of digging into some things a little bit, doing research. And that's when I found out, well, there's all these other flags up there also. And so we just kind of changed gears, plans a little bit, saying, let's go after all of them. So we created what we called the Battle Flag Reclamation Project and approached the Museum of History because we felt real quickly that we needed to have their backing. And they, of course, did back us. Okay, Mike. We sent off a letter later that month of March to the Museum of Confederacy, just politely asking and telling the story about the 05 returns. If these flags, that was the intent, was they would be returned to their state. And we would wanted to know what it would take to get our flags back. Well, they kind of turned that down pretty quick. And we requested a meeting down in late April. You can see representatives from the 26, from the Museum of History went up to meet with the director and a couple of members of their board of directors at the Museum of the Confederacy, and actually put a very nice offer on the table. We were prepared to go to the North Carolina General Assembly and request the funding for it. We had a good number in mind. Basically, we were offering it not to buy them, but to pay them for their custodianship over the flag. We were not going to admit that they truly owned them. They turned that down. So go ahead, Mike. That brings us to the next step. We said, well, we knew always they could turn us down. So what would we do? So we went and talked with the former North Carolina Supreme Court Justice at his law firm in Raleigh, and went through the presentation with him, and he saw that this, if we follow the U.S. Congress's laws in 05 and 06, those flags should be there. So he come and presented his case to our membership at a meeting. Membership unanimously backed it. We put a pretty substantial amount of money there ready to pay for things as we were moving through for legal purposes. And go ahead, Mike. We said if we go to the Museum of Confederacy, we need to have a little bit stronger backing, and that would be from the North Carolina Attorney General's office. So we actually set up a meeting with them in the Department of Cultural Resources in June of 2010 and presented it to them. I still have, let's see here. I still have the big notebook from that time. There's probably about 15 different tabs in here with everything that we presented to them. They turned it down. They just didn't want to go for the flags. So we pretty well stopped at that point. We didn't have the backing that we needed to get our flags. Well, that was around 2010. Several years later, the Museum of the Confederacy decided to kind of redo itself, recreate itself, and merge with whoever it is. I don't know. I kind of got fed up with them and didn't follow them too much, but they are now part of the Museum. Confederacy is now part of the American Civil War Museum. I think they have 3 sites down at Tredegar, at the White House, and then over at Appomattox. So go ahead. And about 2-3 years ago, I decided, well, it might be worth a try to reach out to the new managers, the new directors. And I had a nice phone talk with them, and then I sent them all the stuff from our notebook. And within a couple of days, they too have turned it down. They feel that they own those things, but that's been hard part to swallow and agree with them on it, because if they had been identified in 1905, we would have them. And,
right.
And we also used the argument of preservation. North Carolina Museum of History is knocking the socks off of it. They have been since 2007, right when groups like ours got involved. A lot of other reenacting groups and SCV camps have got involved. And I think the next slide the next slide shows my resources. Hit that one there, Mike. Yeah. Well, Colors of the Gray will be on your left. That is, it's a nice book. It does show all of the flags that they have, wartime flags now, and it has little marks there, little asterisks when it's modern research is ID'd the flag, and that's how I just broke those down. I just dove into that book pretty hard and heavy and created nice spreadsheets and stuff. The other book on the right is basically Richard Rollins has done the book, and it's basically 2 parts. He's got the second part is record of rebel flags captured by Union troops after April 19, 1861, and this shows all of them, and it's got a record of what happened to them. And this is an old reprint. The first part of the book was actually what was given to the people in 1905 on a trip, the Confederate veterans on a trip. So it's a very handy book to put together with Colors of the Gray, and we can get a good feel for what they actually have. And then I hit their website pretty hard, trying to dig into what they had preserved. As I was talking about preservation, they don't come close to what North Carolina Museum of History has got done. Now we can show that next slide. Here's what the North Carolina Museum of History, this shows the state flags, company, first national, second national, battle flags, actually some U.S. flags and post-war flags. It shows the number that they own. In the right column, you'll see how many have been restored. And if you take a quick look at the battle flags, a big chunk of them are done. The company flags are tough to do because those are the silk flags, and you're talking some major money, $20,000 or more, probably depending on the condition. But North Carolina Museum of History has got a tremendous amount of flags to sit there and share with the public. I think in talking with them this week, they have currently about 8 flags out for display, and of course they're rotating them and everything. So that's basically the talk. We feel, the 26 and myself, we feel very strongly about this and very frustrated about it. We feel that they should be back. Right. Even go back to the other states. They deserve their flags because all the other states through the years have been working with each other. I think we got a flag that was sent to Arkansas accidentally in 2005. Well, they realized it when they did the research, and it was the 5th North Carolina. They sent that back to North Carolina. We actually sent a flag back to Rhode Island. North Carolina did. That was captured. We sent that back to them. But the Museum of the Confederacy, I keep calling it that. That's what I'm knowing about.
It's an old habit.
Yeah, they are just very close-minded about it. But yet they're willing to ask the state of Minnesota for a Virginia flag that got up there. Because there were like 545 roughly in the War Department at the close of the war. Well, a lot of the northern states have flags too that they took from the war that never did get turned into the War Department, or they were given from the War Department to them as trophies. So I doubt we'd ever see those unless somebody really started trying to approach them with it. But that's kind of where we're at. I've been kind of lost as to what we should do next, because they're not going to just listen to one. It needs to be all those states that have flags there need to go after them.
And that was my thought. If there was a state out there that was a little more history inclined than North Carolina, that would lead that charge, since our General Assembly is not going to lead that charge, then maybe we could get on that bandwagon as well.
Well, I think the Museum of History would support it. I really do. I'm not going to mention names, but you know who was the Attorney General in 2010.
Yes.
So,
yes, I sure do.
I have to deal with that still, but that was pure political.
I wonder how many other states know, how many people in other states know that the old Museum of the Confederacy, has flags that have been identified to their states.
I would think they would know. I just don't know if they're just resigned not to bother with it, or I don't know. I think it would take some type of national organization, such as the Sons of Confederate Veterans or the UDC, national organization going after it and having the support of those different states.
Right.
That's the only way I see it happening. We tried. We spent quite a bit of money trying to get this stuff done, and it just didn't happen. And then when I tried in 2021, the fall of it, I thought, well, maybe there's new leadership there, new blood in there. The old MOC crowd's gone, and I thought, well, maybe this just would luck out and get it, and no, didn't work. So
right. You mentioned Richard Rawlins. He did a great book called "Damn Red Flags of the Rebellion," which is almost all of the flags captured, Confederate flags captured at Gettysburg, and that's one of those phenomenal books. And nobody else has tackled any other battle.
I've not seen anything.
There's not there's not anything else out there. There's not a book like that on Chickamauga or some of these other battles.
Right.
And that's an opportunity there waiting. There are some good flag books out there. The state of Tennessee has a phenomenal book that came out 2 years ago. It's a massive book that looks at every regiment. I don't know if you've seen this book or not. Looks at Elizabeth, you want to grab that for me? It'll take a minute. But it looks at every regiment, Union and Confederate, and talks about those flags. It's on that top shelf right there. And it's the big book on the right. Go to the right. Yes. You'll need both hands for that book. It's not a cheap book, but that's one of the better books out there. Of course, Howard Michael Mannis did a book on the Confederate flags of the Army of Tennessee, which is a sought after book that's really good. I know Pennsylvania has a 2-volume set on their books, on their flags. And then of course some states have some smaller books, but when I talk about the Tennessee book,
wow,
that's the Tennessee book.
Yeah, that's nice.
It is massive book.
Color
and there
photos?
are a lot of, I'm sorry?
Color photos?
Yes, color photos.
Awesome.
someplace. It has color photos. It does. I swear to you. Oh yeah, whole center section. This is a hard book to hold. Yep, color photos. This is not a curl up in the bed and read at night type of book. But you know, there are a few other states that have books, but nothing to this extreme. But at the same time, you and I were talking off camera about some of the regiments from that had North Carolinians that belong to other states, like the 13th Tennessee Cavalry U.S. They don't know where that flag is. And you know, we could almost mention the 2nd North Carolina Mounted Infantry and the 3rd North Carolina Mounted Infantry U.S. I've never seen those flags either.
Not either.
No, out there. Do you want to talk about the new North Carolina project for a minute?
Be happy to. Most of you, I would think, would know Tom Belton, the former military curator to Museum of History for many years. He retired 10, 12 years ago. His passing, and basically it was the last several years of his work career, he wrote a book on the North Carolina Museum of History Civil War flag collection. That last slide, that's where the numbering come from. When he retired, he was told that they didn't have the money to publish it. So it just sat there. And contacted Tom about 2 years ago, asking if he would still be interested in getting his book published. At the time, I was thinking we would run it through the 26th North Carolina's. We'd do a company front magazine, historical magazine. And we got a great graphics guy that he can make that, like that book you had in your hand, he could lay it out that way. But he said he would love it. So I got on the phone with the director of the museum and some other key people that he pulled in, and we got permission to publish Tom's book for him. And we actually kind of did a mock-up of it, a couple flags and some stuff. And we realized it was going to be a monster project because there's about 100 flags. And Tom wrote an article for each flag, the origin of the flag, how they got it, quick history of the regiment, origin or how the museum got it. And then he had done a ton of research and correspondence with Michael Madison and a lot of other people that are flag experts. Heavily footnoted, and he had the museum quality pictures that went with it. So what I had them do, they sent everything to me, all the articles, all the pictures, and we pieced it together. And we decided, though, the 26th, our graphics editor guy, Jason Goodnight, it was just too much, and it needed to be done right. It needed to be, because this is going to be big. So I contacted some publishers, and we found one, and I sent it in to McFarland Publishing about a week and a half ago. Tom's book's going to get published finally.
Awesome.
It's 500 plus images. We added an image of a soldier for each flag. And we had the stipulation that the soldier needed to be with the flag. And so if the flag was captured at Spotsylvania, we wanted a soldier from that regiment's image that would go with it. And he needed to be at Spotsylvania. I enlisted the help, to me, the two best North Carolina image collectors out there, Greg Mast and Fred Taylor. They were big time help and helped me pick the pictures and everything. So we gave it a little personal touch. Each flag's got a little human touch to it now. So we're excited. I know Tom is. It needed to be done. This needed to be done. So
I'm excited too. It looks really good. I'm excited. Of course, I'm always excited to see good North Carolina history books.
Right.
Whether they tell a Confederate story or a Union story or some other story, as long as it's well written, it helps us all.
He did a phenomenal job. I helped get his bibliography put together, and I just was impressed once it all was laid out there in front of me, about 8 or 9 pages, just who he talked to, who he books and reference, where he went to get his info.
Right.
It's unreal. So actually going to be we're pushing for them to footnote it, not endnote it. So we want the footnotes down at the bottom of the page. When you get to sit there and read the book, you're not going to have to flip through the book so much. So it's exciting. He did a great job. He broke it down by the types of flags: state flags, company flags, First National, Second National. Each of those have their own chapter, and finished off battle flags, U.S. flags, and post-war flags, which was really interesting. You see a lot of the UCV camps, the branch camp out of Raleigh area.
Right.
Tom had found a ton of images from that UCV camp that,
Yes.
We've added it with it. So we're excited for him.
Yep. I'm looking forward to it. Corey Mercer asked, where can we get the book? I think we're looking at fall of 2025.
No, fall of 24.
This fall.
It's on the list, McFarland Publishing.
Yep. So, Corey, when that becomes available, I'm sure I will be putting notes out there and encouraging people to go check out that book because the parts of it that I have seen so far are just absolutely marvelous. And so hopefully this fall sometime, I'll be dropping a note going, hey, maybe we can even talk Tom into joining me some Sunday night to talk about it.
There's your expert.
And we can go from there and talk a little bit more. I have a tie to some of those flags that the old Museum of the Confederacy has. In writing about the Branch Lane Brigade, they hold 3 of those branch pattern flags, very distinctive flags. And, they have the 37ths and the 28ths and the 33rds flag. When I was a kid, one of those personal stories, we went to Gettysburg for the reenactment for the first time in 1988. And on the way back, we stopped at Lee Chapel there in Lexington.
Hang in there, didn't they?
Yep. And the flags were still up. Yep. The original flags were still up. Yep. And, there's the 37th North Carolina's branch pattern flag that they got in December of 1862 hanging there. Of course, I had no idea in 1988 that I would ever write about the 37th or the rest of the Branch Lane Brigade, but I just thought that was just one of those, for me, amazing stories, about how I interacted, with the little piece of history that I would write later. Kind of like the 58th North Carolina troops. When I was working on that book, doing research, and I went to the battlefield of Resaca, Georgia, where we parked for the reenactment, is the ground the 58th charged over. In May of 1864. So just some of those little stories out there that, my personal ties to some of these regiments.
The 26th restored that 58th, and we had you down as their speaker.
I sure did.
Museum. So.
I have a theory about that flag because there's pieces of 2 different flags there. And I think their Dalton issued flag was cut up at the end of the war and not surrendered. And of course, Major Harper got the 5.8 and the NC, which he took home from that flag. That I guess one of his daughters or grandchildren eventually gave that there to the Hall of History in Raleigh.
There's I think there's back up at the Museum of the Confederacy. I've got it written down somewhere. Let me find that for you real quick. They not only have the 1905 and 1906 flags that were sent back from the War Department. They have a ton of donated flags, and that's something I looked. I'm quickly wrote down about 11 flags that they had that was private donations to them, And I keep asking, why did you not go to the Hall of History in Raleigh with these
That's
things?
right. Yep.
But there's, you know, I don't know. Some of it was just kind of, I guess they wanted to be there with that up there, have, represent North Carolina in that room that we had in the old White House. But there's those 25 of them that need to come back. Definitely.
I agree. And I see in the discussion, a lot of folks, our friend David Pope is going to talk to some folks there in Tennessee. And I see some other folks there who are interested and maybe get a national effort going.
Right.
And then you've already mentioned Fred Taylor. There he is popping into the conversation.
Right.
And, maybe I know politically things are not usually on our side at this point in time here in the 2020s, but maybe some point in hopefully the near future. I've thanks to you and thanks to the North Carolina division of the Sons of Confederate Veterans, I've had a chance to stand on that stage there in Raleigh at the museum and talk about a lot of these flags. And I would love to have that opportunity again with a whole bunch of flags.
Oh yeah.
And just get that history out there. That's just part of it. I think a lot of times people do not know that.
They might not. This Colors of the Gray book. Like I said, I broke it down, just went flag by flag by flag, and I'm sitting here looking at my one spreadsheet. I've called it part 3 because this was my 3rd tab on that spreadsheet. Flags from the U.S. War Department, 1906, and I've got the WD number and the unit affiliation, and if it's got a modern ID or not. And I'm sitting here looking at all these I've got the other states. I know what flags that they've modern identified. I'll share you that with you. Okay. You can do however you want to share it. I don't mind at all. It's going to take some national effort.
Yep, it is. And I will at some point in the near future probably put that up on the Looking for the Confederate War blog and get it out there and pass it out.
Right.
And I'm sure some people will be tired of me talking about Memphis, Tennessee so much because that's been my kick the past 2 months.
Yeah. Understandably.
Talk about a place that's forgotten its history.
Oh, yeah.
That one is right up there. So if you got any more questions for Skip this evening, please drop them in the comment box. And bunch of folks talking. Our friend Jason up in Winchester is talking about how the old Museum of the Confederacy has the 2nd, 5th, and 33rd flags and the 6th Virginia Cavalry flags. Confession time, have not been to the American Civil War Museum since it combined with the Museum of the Confederacy. I went once before that. I think I was invited to go speak or something. And I spoke at the old Museum of the Confederacy as well. I have been to the museum at Appomattox, which this is not the National Park Service Museum. Right. This is a separate building. If you're coming from the west before you get to the National Park Service facility. But I've been in there more recently, and they actually do a good job displaying some of those Confederate flags that were captured at Appomattox or surrendered at Appomattox. Particularly remember both the 27th and the 28th and 37th flags being on display at that museum at some point in time. But I wholeheartedly agree with you, and they need to come back to North Carolina and the other states, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama. We need those flags back.
I'm sorry. We tried to use the argument too of preservation, and we showed them what we were doing in North Carolina. And this is when they turned us down in April of 2007. They quickly started trying to communicate with the Museum of History, bypassing the 26, and saying, why don't we work out a lending program to send those flags down to you, and y'all can work on getting them restored.
Right.
But you know what they would do? They would have taken them right back up.
Right.
We said, we're not touching these flags,
Right.
not until they become North Carolina property. The 26 has restored 9 flags on their own, and we've assisted with another one.
Right.
We always felt that instead of doing a uniform of one person, let's do a flag which represented 1,000 guys, perhaps.
Yes. Yes.
It represented more people than one, and so that's why we push so hard on the flag preservation.
It's a vital part, and as we're often told, the various states a lot of times either don't have the money or are not all that interested, and it's up to groups, private groups like the 26th and other reenacting organizations and the Sons of Confederate Veterans to get those flags preserved and make sure that they are there for future generations. Wes Combs asked, and I will ask you, Skip, is there any work going on to get that Virginia flag back from Minnesota?
I just know that they were after it. So we'd have to check their website. This was 07, 08.
Okay.
When I found that out, that they had, wasn't willing to give back the flags that really wasn't theirs, but yet at the same time, they're going to Minnesota saying, hey, we want this flag.
Right.
So I don't know if they got it, but I'm got a bad taste in my mouth when I say MOCs.
Which is unfortunate because, its foundations
It
were just incredible, to preserve not only all of these flags, but, Robert E. Lee's uniform and Jeb Stuart's hat and, their painting, the big painting of the one that hangs behind my desk, the last meeting,
Julia's Lee and Jackson.
Phenomenal. I mean, that thing is huge.
Beautiful. And I vividly remember going into the Museum of Confederacy for the first time, and just my jaw was dropping everywhere I turned. So, it's a shame. But I don't know if they got that flag or not, but they did have the gall to sit there and tell us no, but yet at the same time ask other states to return things.
Right.
I have another thing, Michael, and I'll share it with you as well. Years ago, I created this kind of a listing what the Museum of History has in Raleigh, and I kind of did a color code system. Blue, it means it's in process of the money's being raised. Red means it's restored. And I've typed in what unit or group did the restoration, and I think I put the years down. For the most part, I put the years down when something was restored. But I'll share that with you as well. I got it updated this week, actually.
Awesome. I know you've shared some stuff with me in the past that's in one of these notebooks down here on one of these shelves back when you came and spoke in Burnsville for me. State flag. So Brian asked a question about a state flag. I think staying with a regiment when the regiment got its battle flag, I think that's what he's asking there. And sometimes those regimental flags, the state flags, were sent back to the state. And then sometimes they did stay with the regiment. And if a battle flag was captured, the state would put that regiment would put that state flag back into service. I've seen both of those happen in the past.
Right.
Flags are one of those interesting stories. And I encourage you to check it out. I saw someone mention earlier about Robert E. Lee's headquarters flag. That was his first headquarters flag. And I don't know if you know this or not, Skip, but it wound up in Charlotte at the end of the war.
Wow.
After he retired.
The Canton area has the stars in the shape of an A.
Yep. He retired that flag after Gettysburg. When most of the senior leadership got second nationals for headquarters flags, and his original headquarters flag was sent to Richmond. And then as Richmond is being captured, they sent at least one, if not 2 or 3 boxes of captured Union flags to Charlotte on the train.
Okay.
And somebody pried, I have to look up and see who it was, but they pried that box open and saw Lee's headquarters flag in it and stuck it in their jacket and smuggled it out of Charlotte. Now, his second headquarters flag, that second national, was actually cut up at Appomattox.
Okay. Speaking of second national headquarters flag, Tom's book's got Robert F. Hoke's flag.
Yes.
That's a pretty photograph of it.
Yep. And beautiful flag.
Yeah. Got Salisbury Prison's second national flag.
Yep.
Got good photographs of it as well. So.
Yep. Our friend Fred Taylor says that right now, to his knowledge, nothing is actively being done to get that Virginia flag back from Minnesota.
And again, that was 07, 08 when I found out about that. So,
but it does happen from time to time. Every once in a while, an article will pop up with a flag that has been returned. But we'll have to continue to watch for those stories. David Pope keeps asking about flags that went to the valley with Jew Burley, and David will have to look that one up at a later
64, date. Right? So yeah. I will share, Michael, with you those that listing I have for the Museum of History and the 1906 stuff at the Museum of the Confederacy, based upon Rebecca Rose's book. That's awesome. Where I'm pulling the information.
Fantastic. All right, folks, if you got any more questions, drop them in the chat. Otherwise, we will be signing off for David Pope. He says he's highly interested in any images. You better hope they're at the North Carolina Museum of History, because they're great to work with. The Museum of the Confederacy, Old Museum of the Confederacy, wants a lot of money for them pictures of those flags.
Yeah.
And writing the Branch Lane book, that was a big check to write just to get the images and permission to use them.
Yeah.
And so fantastic. And there's our friend Tom Belton popping up saying that we did a great job.
Hello, Tom.
Yeah. Thanks for popping in and joining us, Tom. All right, folks. I'm going to put Skip here in the back. Skip, thank you so much for joining us this evening. And we'll have you on again sometime in the near future and do some more chatting. I want to say thanks, everybody, for joining me this evening, Sunday Night History Chat. Continue to check stuff out. As I always say, continue to research and share history like we're doing here tonight. That's what it's all about, is us out there telling this story and getting that information out there. So thank you so much for joining me this evening. We'll be having some more guests on here in the near future, but hey, you'll just have to check back in to see what crazy things we're going to do next. Y'all have a fantastic week. If you're down in Valdez, North Carolina, please join me this Saturday night and at the Burke County Public Library a week from Monday. Y'all have a fantastic week, and God bless.